I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Ashley, you want to take the roll call?
Mike Hobson.
Here.
Michelle Blythe.
Here.
Jan Schwedding.
Here.
Marilyn Irby.
Here.
Jessica Stupas.
Here.
Deborah Nelson.
Here.
Don Vanny.
Here.
Jessica, you're on mute.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a special guest this evening, so it's my pleasure to introduce you to David Flickenstein. Hope I said that correctly, David.
You did, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. David is the Aviation Division Director at WSDOT, but also more importantly, he's chairing the Commercial Aircraft Coordinating Commission, which is, he's going to explain that to us and give us an update on their work.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that Warren Hendrickson, who's the Vice Chair, is also on the phone with us this evening.
Nice to have you, Warren.
That would be me. Thank you very much for the invitation. Very kind.
And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'm going to try and share my screen. I've got a few quick slides that I think will help lead this quick discussion that we're going to have.
That'd be great.
Can everyone see my slide deck?
We can.
So I know we only have 10 minutes to talk through these slides, Mayor, so I'm going to be very brief, but I would say that if you'd like us to come back at any time, we'd be happy to conduct a follow-up with you. So this commission was put together a little bit over a year ago to address capacity issues within Washington State, given a finite amount of space really for CTAC. So last year, prior to the pandemic, CTAC had about 24 million enplanements for 2019. By the year 2040 or 2050, that number is expected to double given the population growth for the Puget Sound area. So what that equates to is trying to figure out, can we add enough capacity within the Puget Sound area for the population that's expected to be here by the year 2050? So this commission was put together to look at that. And it has three basic requirements: to come up with a short list of no more than 6 airports by January 1st of 2021, to identify 2 top airports by September 1st of 2021, and to identify a single preferred location by January 1st of 2022 with a 60% majority vote from all of the commission members. And in doing so, the commission has to look at the feasibility of constructing a facility and its impacts, given what we know about what aviation does to the environment, the community, as well as the economic impacts. And this facility is meant to be operational by the year 2040. Along with that, the commission has to provide recommendations on the long-range facility needs for air passenger service, air cargo operations, and general aviation. And it could mean the expansion of 1 or more existing airports or the construction of a brand new facility somewhere in order to meet that demand. And I'll talk a little bit about how the commission is addressing the demand for air passenger service, air cargo, and general aviation. Now, what's important to know is that the airline industry, there are a lot of unknowns associated with how the airline industry will recover post-pandemic and when we're going to actually see, a return to more normalcy within the aviation industry. It's predicted right now that airlines aren't expected to see the kind of demand they had in 2019 until 2024 or beyond. But who knows really how that's going to occur. So we have 4 guiding principles that the commission looks at when making any recommendations or how we're crafting decisions for the future. And those are environmental responsibility, economic feasibility. Can we fund what the commission proposes? Social equity. So how do we ensure that underrepresented individuals have a voice? And what's the public benefit of what the commission recommends? What's important about this work is this commission is really laying the foundation for not only meeting future demand, but how our aviation system within the state is going to look like for years to come. So there are 6 recommendations that are getting ready to come out of the commission. The commission is going to report to the legislators in January of this year. And at the top of that is a list of what we're calling a soft list of 6 airports. And we refer to this as a soft list because the commission hasn't been able to do all of its due diligence given the impacts from the pandemic over the last year. So that list of 6 are lists of airports that could meet some of the demand, whether it is air passenger service, air cargo operations, or general aviation demand in the future. So you see Arlington Municipal Airports on there, Bremerton National Airport, Snohomish County or Payne Field, Sanderson Field in Shelton, Tacoma Narrows Airport at Gig Harbor, and then Ed Carlson Memorial, which is in Lewis County. What's important here is that Arlington is being looked at for its potential to facilitate additional general aviation capacity, not for air passenger service or air cargo operations at this time. There's already a very robust general aviation community there in Arlington, and we expect that to continue. The second recommendation is proposing a phased implementation to meet demand by adding capacity to 2 to 3 existing airports before building a larger airport. And again, we see that as the most resilient path because we don't know how aviation, the airline industry is going to return post-pandemic. And there's a lot of unknowns associated with building an airport 20 years in the future, given what technology is going to unfold between now and then. We've also asked for the commission's timeline to be extended by another 2 years, given the impacts of the pandemic, and to take advantage of an aviation system plan update that occurs in 2022. So essentially, we're asking for a 2-year extension. We're also asking support from legislators on something called the CARB program. Now, this program is a loan program that was put together and has been in existence for almost 2 years now, and it was meant to fund existing airports, smaller airports with loans so that they could pursue revenue producing projects. And if legislators don't act on it, the program goes away because it doesn't have anything to sustain it at this point. The next recommendation is we think that a bridging strategy is necessary when we talk about demand. And this goes back to being environmentally responsible. If we're going to meet the demand out there in the future, we know that today's aircraft are going to be around for the next 20 to 30 years from the time that they come out of production. So you need something to be able to address the impacts of that on the environment, and sustainable aviation fuel is one of those things that we can reduce the impacts on the environment. And finally, we are encouraging legislators to continue the efforts of the Electric Aircraft Working Group and WSDOT's overall efforts in emerging aerospace technology. So you may not be aware, but WSDOT for the last 2 years has been leading a feasibility study on electric aircraft and the potential for those aircraft to be used across the state, and the potential for reducing harmful emissions and reducing the cost of a ticket, essentially. So there's been some good news that's come out of that, and we just want legislators to say, hey, we want you guys to keep doing that work. And then finally, what's probably most important is that the economics behind our airports is really quite substantial. In 2012, the last time that an aviation economic impact study was conducted, we saw $15.3 billion in wages associated with airports and all of the activity that goes along with the aviation industry, and aerospace. And by 2040, those numbers had, or by 2020, those numbers had nearly doubled to where now the associated wages are at 26.8 million and $107 billion in business revenues that come out of the aviation industry and aerospace for Washington State. So it's pretty important that we consider demand in the future because there's an economic tie to it, but there's also the environmental issues that we need to address that are coming out of this commission. So in a nutshell, and I'm sorry this was very quick, but I know we only had 10 minutes, that's the bulk of what the commission is up to right now. And we have a lot of work to do in the next couple of years. And I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has for myself or Warren.
Would you mind, David, to stop sharing your screen so I can see the council again?
Yeah, certainly. Sorry.
And I do have a question for you as well. Can you tell us how the Puget Sound Regional Council's aviation capacity study informs the work of the commission?
Yeah, so Josh Brown sits on, from PSR, sits on the commission as one of the commissioners. And there were a number of studies that have gone into the research behind the coordinating commissioner's efforts. And one of those is the PSRC study. So for the FAA to acknowledge that the state of Washington has a capacity issue, there had to be some kind of study that laid that baseline. And that's precisely what the PSRC study has done. So they've identified the shortfall in capacity. And now this commission was formed to try and figure out what do we do about that shortfall and how and if do we meet demand in the out years.
Thank you. Makes sense. Jan has a question.
I was just curious as to why Bellingham's airport was not on that list.
Well, Bellingham, it's a matter of proximity to the population to a certain extent. So Bellingham could be a potential candidate if we had something like high-speed rail that could get people to and from Bellingham. But a lot of it has to do with what's in close proximity to the existing population base.
Okay, so you're only looking at putting another airport on the east or west side of the mountains as opposed to anything in Eastern Washington.
Yeah, it's likely that the commission will make some recommendations. For instance, we're looking at recommendations for Moses Lake, given the potential for air cargo operations. But the fact of the matter is that expansion to meet capacity needs to be in close proximity to the airport or to the population. For instance, we could move air cargo to the other side of the mountains, but it would probably get on a truck and get trucked right back to Seattle to service the people that live there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
David, could you give us a little bit of an idea of what the makeup of the commission is?
Yeah, so there are 26 commission members. One of those seats is unfilled, so it's 25 right now. And some of those are voting, some of those are non-voting. And it is a broad spectrum. So we have industry partners on there. We have 4 legislators that are non-voting on the commission. We have individuals like myself, Josh Brown from PSRC. We have different regions representative from metropolitan planning organizations. We have a couple of citizens that are on from both the east and the west side of the mountains. And then we also have representatives from different airports as well. So it's pretty broad in terms of, who would be needed for the expertise to figure this whole thing out.
Thank you. I saw Michelle had a question too.
Yeah, thank you. So you had mentioned that Arlington was being considered for, if I remember the slide, general aviation.
General aviation.
Okay, so what looks different for us than what we have right now to what they're looking at in the future?
So it could be something as simple as saying, can you build additional hangars to house for additional general aviation aircraft? We know that if we make a recommendation for one airport, it could have an impact where some of the general aviation located at that airport would have to find a new home. So there's some trickle down effects that we have to take into consideration. And we know that general aviation is one of those things that will have to be addressed.
Thank you.
I appreciate you calling that out at the beginning. I have heard from citizens who were involved in the public process for the PSRC study. And we're feeling a little confused about what the future of the Arlington airport was.
Sure. Well, and I'll tell you that both the WSDOT staff and the PSRC staff looked at Arlington. There are a whole list of airports that got looked at. The WSDOT staff noted that it would be problematic for Arlington because of the length of the current runway. And the PSRC staff saw that there was potential in it. So it comes out as potential for commercial service, but the potential in our eyes is really with general aviation.
We're proud that other people recognize what a great airport we have. And it's always been our plans to use it as a general aviation airport and to stir economic development around the airport with our Cascade Industrial Center.
Sure.
Which it's doing. Mike has a question. Mike, you're muted.
Sorry. With the changes occurring, I'm assuming that at that point in time, we would have a tower at the airport, whereas right now we do not. Is that correct?
Well, you know, I can't really speak for what would require towered operations. There's a threshold that would have to be, met for a tower to be considered, especially, the FAA has a lot of say in that. So there's nothing that the recommendation that would come out of the commission right now that would recommend a tower.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions that you want to ask? David, I really appreciate you coming and directly updating the council on what the commission's doing in its work. And we will accept your invitation to come back, perhaps after the legislative session when things start to refine a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Warren, for coming as well.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
And
Thanks.
best for the holidays.
Thank you. Okay, we didn't have any members of the public that wished to speak to the council this evening, so it's just us.
Madam Mayor, I would like to move to approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of the November 16th and November 23rd, 2020 council meetings and November 23rd, 2020 joint meeting. Accounts payable approval of EFT payments and claims checks number 101430 through 101628, dated November 17th, 2020 through December 7th, 2020, for $4,873,579.11, as well as the resolution vacating a portion of public right-of-way.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and so we'll move into our public hearing section. We have 5 public hearings this evening. And the first one is the ordinance adopting the 2020 budget amendments. Kristen Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may share my screen real quick, I just have a couple of slides to go over tonight's presentation. Can you all see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So good evening, members of council, and good evening to any members of the public that may be tuning in tonight. I have just a couple of slides to provide an overview of our proposed 2020 budget amendments. I will not be going over every line item detail, but if you want to see the detail, that is included in tonight's council agenda packet. Okay. Oh, okay. So we have total amendments for our 2020 budget of about 22 million. 4.9 million of that will be in the general fund and 17.3 million will be in all the other funds. All of the other funds include all of our capital project funds and our enterprise funds, such as the airport and our utility funds. Our amendments are broken out primarily in 3 categories. The majority of our amendments are related to our debt refinancing. The city had an opportunity to lower our interest costs by refinancing our 2007 or 2010 bonds and also refinancing a promissory note that we had. 22% of our amendments are transferred between reserve funds and capital project funds. So what that means is if an enterprise has some excess fund balance, they may want to transfer some of that to their reserve funds so they can accumulate money then to pay for capital projects. Or those reserve funds may need to provide interim cash flow in the case that we have a grant funded project and we may not get reimbursement by month end or year end. So we may need interim cash flow. So we do a transfer between those funds. And then 22% of the amendments are for capital projects and equipment. And my last slide will highlight a couple of those projects and equipment purchases. Just a couple of updates. So we reviewed all of the amendments with council at the November 23rd workshop. There were 3 adjustments that were made or updates. 2 of those were related to CARES Act funding. We did get some additional funding from Snohomish County and the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. The CARES Act funding from Snohomish County was additional money for business rent relief and COVID-related expenses. And the Economic Alliance grant was for an online jobs portal that will help connect employees or employers with potential job candidates. And then the last update was an increase to the transfer between the Airport Reserve Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. We did have a large project invoice that came in, which was included on tonight's claims. We are prepared to submit a reimbursement for that. It's a grant funded project, but we're in the event that we don't get the reimbursement in time, we want to make sure that we have interim cash flow. So we needed to increase that just a little bit to make sure we were covered there for year end. And then here's a list of some of the major amendments. Again, this isn't an all-inclusive list, but the full detailed list is included in the council packet for tonight. Again, the majority of the amendments are for the refinancing. We had about $1 million altogether of CARES Act funding between what we were awarded from the Department of Commerce, from Snohomish County, and the EASC. We had transfers between reserve funds and capital project funds. We did an amendment for plan review services, which is the Safe Built contract, and that's paid for by plan review fees. And then we had some equipment purchases, and I've listed here just a few of the major capital projects that are included in amendments. But again, the full list is in your packet. And that was the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you, Kristen. Do you want to stop sharing your screen? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see, my apologies. There we go. There.
So we'll open the public hearing, and we have no members of the public that wish to speak this evening. So I'll close the public hearing portion and open up for any questions from the council. Seeing none, I want to thank Kristen for the great detailed information that was in our packet and the multiple times of taking us through. Through that. And because we're running out of meetings for the end of this year, we are hoping that the council will take action on this evening.
I move to approve the ordinance amending the 2020 budget section of the 2019-2020 biennial budget for the city of Arlington and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the amendment passes. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you so much.
So our next public hearing is the resolution approving the 6-year transportation improvement plan. Mark Hayes and Jim Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, this item before you is an annual requirement by the state of Washington to show that the city is planning for its maintenance and future development of its transportation system. We have to lay out our 6-year plan for every project that we want to build or have a desire to build in order to get any type of funding, whether it be gas funding or federal funding for the construction and the design. We have a list of, one moment, please. '91 projects before you tonight, and they cover everything from multimodal transportation, trails, to new road construction and rehabilitation of existing roads. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Jim, I think that's, I think you've covered it here with
Just turn it back to you to open it up for the public hearing.
Thank you, Jim. So I'll open it up for the public hearing. And again, we had no members of the public that wish to speak to this evening. So we'll close the public hearing and open it up for any council questions. Jim, I take it that the highlighted ones on the packet we got this week are the additional projects?
They are the new ones that have been added to the list, yes.
Thank you for highlighting those. Appreciated that. And again, this is something that we expect the council to act on this evening since we did the workshop last week on it.
Okay, do I read it or does Jessica?
It's you, Jan.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution adopting the City of Arlington's 2021 through 2026 6-year transportation improvement plan and authorize the mayor to sign the resolution.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Jim and Mark, for working together on a transportation improvement plan. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members.
So we'll move to our next item for a public hearing, which is the development agreement with North Point Development, LLC. Mark Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So before you this evening is the development agreement being proposed for North Point Development. This is for the Arlington portion of the development. It's a 426 acre industrial park, of which 87 acres are within the Arlington portion of the CIC. The reason the development agreement is here is just to give some assurances to both North Point and their capital partner, Northwestern Mutual, that things will be consistent as we move through this process. There's some vesting that's involved in this. And that vesting is contingent, of course, upon the binding site plan to be submitted by North Point Development prior to the March date in 2021.
Thank you, Mark. So we'll open the public hearing at this time. And again, we had no members of the public that wish to speak this evening. So I'll close the public hearing and open it up to the council for any questions. Mike.
Yeah, what tax exemptions are applied to this project for the developer?
There currently are no tax exemptions applied to the development. They have not submitted because they haven't built a building yet to submit for the tax exemption premised upon the 25 employee count, which is being offered, although that is under scrutiny right now. So that isn't even available at this moment.
Okay, so, but eventually they would be eligible if they choose to take it to an ad valorem tax exemption and a capital gains tax exemption. Am I correct when I say that?
Exemption on the improvements. So on their building and improvements of the property. And that's just for both county and city tax.
It's a property tax. It's not a capital gains tax. And right now, we don't, because the county's population has grown over the 800,000 threshold. We have to have the legislature act on that bill in order for it to be able to be used again.
To be which one? The
Property tax exemption.
The property tax, that's the ad valorem tax. It's described as ad valorem. Am I correct there?
Correct.
That's correct. Okay. But the capital gains, of course, that's federal anyway. So the ad valorem, so that would be lost city revenues then, by definition.
It wouldn't be lost city revenues. It would be new revenues that the city wouldn't gain access to for the period of the tax exemption. We would still get, you know, the property tax on the underlying land that is in place. But again, I want to reiterate, this development agreement doesn't touch those items at all. They're not considered in here.
Right. Okay. Now I just want to get clear on exactly what's happening with the property here.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Don.
Hey, Mark, I just wanted to confirm section 12 on page 6, transfer of ownership. The stuff highlighted, is that new verbiage that was put into it?
No, it was just highlighting that didn't get removed during the review process before it went forward here. So I just need to eliminate the highlighting on that.
Okay, that's why I was curious if that was something new or needed to go away.
No, it just needs to go away. Sorry about the confusion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And again, I do think that Mark is expecting the council to act on this evening.
I move to approve the development agreement for North Point Development LLC and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement, subject to final review by the city attorney.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Wayne and David, thank you for being here in case we had questions. Appreciate it. So we'll move to our next public hearing, which is the ordinance adopting the capital facilities plan for the Arlington School District. Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So this is the first of 2 capital facilities plans that are going to be looked at this evening. This one is for the Arlington School District. So the capital facilities plans are required by the Growth Management Act. School district must present their updated capital facilities plan to the city for adoption on an annual basis, thus allowing the city to collect school impact fees on new development as it occurs. So this is an updated plan. It's through 2025. And the difference in the process this year is that typically we would do this during our docketing process. The docketing process got delayed, but also the school district wants to be in alignment with other jurisdictions that they are dealing with who actually do their capital facilities adoption through the jurisdiction's budgeting process. So that's why we're doing it a little differently this year. But this is the same as you've seen in years past through our docket process.
Thank you, Mark. And once again, we'll open the public hearing and note that there was no public requesting to speak to this item this evening. So we'll close the public hearing and I'll open it up to any council members that have questions.
Okay, I move to adopt the Arlington School District 2020 through 2025 capital facilities plan and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the plan passes unanimously. And our final public hearing this evening is adopting the capital facilities plan for the Lakewood School District. Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So this is consistent, pardon me, with the previously capital facilities plan for Arlington. This just happens to be for the Lakewood School District. Same rules apply for Lakewood as they did for Arlington. And as I said earlier, the process has changed a bit this year than it has in years past, simply because the district would like to be in alignment with other jurisdictions and do the capital facilities plan adoption through the budgeting process.
Thank you, Mark. And so again, we'll open the public hearing and note that there was no members of the public interested in speaking to this evening. So we'll close the public hearing and open it to council questions. No
Okay.
questions from the council?
I move to adopt the Lakewood School District 2020 through 2025 Capital Facilities Plan and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. And Mark, I think for 2020, the council just beat the record of the planning commission for the number of public hearings in one evening.
Thank you very much for
okay.
your consideration this evening, Mayor or Madam Mayor and council members.
Thank you, Mark. Tell the planning commission to return the trophy.
Yeah, I will do so.
Okay. So now we'll move into our new business. And first up is the resolution to add annexation into North County Regional Fire Authority to the February 9th, 2021 ballot. Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. Council. On November 2nd, Council took action and actually approved a similar resolution to this to put the proposed annexation into the North County Regional Fire Authority on the February 9th ballot. We're just in the process of putting all that information together. It's due to the county this week. And in the process, we realized that there was a formatting issue with the resolution that was approved on November 2nd. And the a voter's pamphlet was left out of the resolution, which is a necessary piece for the county moving forward. This amends that resolution and adds that voter's pamphlet to the request that we're making to the county.
Anybody have any questions on the amendment?
Okay. I move to approve the resolution and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. So we'll move to our next item, which is a resolution to reduce a portion of the general levy rate, tax rate. Paul.
Again, thank you, Mayor. This resolution is to follow up our conversations that started back in June when council held a retreat to discuss the annexation into North County Regional Fire Authority. At the time, we discussed several different options with the city's general levy rate and what we could do with that. And at the time, we had kind of landed on a reduction to 82 cents to our general property tax to relieve some of the impacts to the taxpayer. In looking at that, what we discovered is that a reduction down to 75%, 75 cents, significantly changed the percentage of residents in the city that would save money or their property tax would remain the same. In fact, that went up to about 54% of the residents would either save on their general property tax or wouldn't see any impacts at all. Council, we've had some discussion on this. This resolution just memorializes that we agreed on that, a reduction to about 75 cents. We're using a lot of abouts and approximates in this. That's just because we're projecting out to the 2022 year in property tax. And of course, not having the AV for 2022 yet, those numbers could adjust a little bit. Council always sets our property tax rate in December. You just did that a couple of meetings ago, actually in November, excuse me. You just did that a couple of meetings ago for 2021, and you will have that similar opportunity for 2022. That's why we're using approximates and about in our discussion with these dollar amounts.
Does council have any questions?
Okay. I move to approve the resolution and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Council. I think that was a great move to ensure more people either save money or pay the same. That's great. So we'll move to our final item this evening, and it's a professional services contract with Southern Creative LLC for the snowcowork.com project.
And I will discuss that. This is actually a grant opportunity that came up after our last workshop. So we got notice of this availability and got the approval on it in between meetings, so that we weren't able to get this to a workshop for council to discuss prior to this meeting. The city was awarded a grant, as the mayor just said, to create a platform to assist mating up employers and employees with job opportunities. It is specific to Snohomish County, but really our interest is in the CIC. This is an opportunity for getting displaced workers that may be affected by COVID, job-related closures or hour restrictions with employers who are seeking employees. We know that from the CIC, we've had a significant amount of growth in employment base, and we have a large number of employers that are out there that are looking for employees. So this is an opportunity to match it up. This is 100% grant funded through CARES Act funding that's administered by the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. It's a very quick turnaround, as we've talked about with this COVID money. That's why this is such time sensitive. We were awarded the grant in between meetings. The money has to be expended. The project has to be complete by the end of December. So we're only talking about a few week window here to get this project up and running. Like I said, it is 100% grant funded. The grant award was $98,000. The contract amount was $97,713.
Any questions, Deborah?
Well, first of all, I want to say this is awesome. And I really appreciate the ingenuity of going forward with this. And I have several people in my neighborhood that are looking for work because of COVID layoffs. So, and actually a citizen wrote me a couple weeks ago, just in frustration of losing a job, and his wife also, due to COVID, and looking for work. So this is timely. This is awesome. Great work on the part of the team. And then my question would be is, when they get this developed, can somebody come and show us how it works, what it looks like, so that, you know, because we're ambassadors to so many citizens that do kind of share their hard times and frustrations. It would be nice to know exactly where to send them. So that would be helpful.
Yes,
Yeah, that'd be great.
happy to do that. In fact, I think we only have one more meeting left this year, so it might be the first of next year. But we'll definitely send you information when it launches and goes live, so you can go explore it. And then Southern Creative can come in and talk about how many employers are taking advantage of it and the functionality.
A good way to start the new year, right?
Yes. Yeah, we even connected today with Workforce Snohomish County is going to give us information about job retraining that's available for displaced workers, so that we can connect that with the website as well.
Excellent.
Don, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, do we have an idea of what the full scope of their services is going to be and how many citizens they think this might affect and help?
Well, I did send you the proposal. I sent it to all the council that we submitted for the grant, that the pages that had the full scope of work and talked about the project. I think it was about a week and a half ago, because we only had a couple of days to get it together.
Okay, I'll go back and take a look.
I'll send it to you again if you'd like.
No, I'll go back and take a look. I'm sure it's there. I just bypassed it looking at this for tonight's meeting.
Okay. And I can't tell you how many people will be affected by it. We hope to affect as many people who need, you know, meaningful employment, and as many employers who are looking for workforce right now.
even though this is COVID related money, CARES Act and specific, to help people that are affected by it, I just see this being a tool for the community and for the CIC moving into the future to be able to give people access to that are maybe underemployed to better employment opportunities. So I think this is a very powerful tool.
Are there any other questions?
All right. I move to approve the professional service agreement with Southern Creative LLC for the snowcowork.com project and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second.
Question?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, passes unanimously. Do we have any additional comments from council members this evening? Jan?
Yes, I have a concern that I would like sometime in the first 3 or 4 months of 2021 that can be brought to council and discussed. And my concern is the other night at SCT, Stephen Toy talked about growth. He had maps that showed the growth in lots in the rural area, because their intent is to put more housing in the rural areas. A lot of the map he showed had properties that were outside our city limits, but were close enough that's going to have a huge impact. We already know what happened when they put out those 600 homes. I would like a discussion on that, and also how, when they want to put homes or property developments right outside our city, and we run water and sewer there, who makes those decisions on us running our water and sewer outside our city limits?
Sounds good, Jan, to me.
Yeah, two things, Jan. We will put that on an agenda to discuss. I will say, just a follow up to your last question about the water. We have a water service area that does extend out past the city limits. It's interesting that Mark Hayes, Jim Kelly, Steve Heifel and I were having this conversation just a few hours ago this afternoon about that very thing, about the development that's occurring out there and our water service area. And we realize that we haven't updated that water service area in about 20 years. And so things might be different than, our priorities may be different than what they were 20 years ago or 20 some years ago when we did that. But we are looking at what our options are with that. But we don't just run water outside the city in any direction. It was a master planned area of where each water purveyor in the county would supply water in critical areas. So
does that plan get updated with the comprehensive plan? Or can we?
I think it can. That's a good question. It's actually, Steve's looking into it now to find out the
Since we're
ins and outs of
looking
that.
at the comprehensive plan update, taking us out to 2050, it would really be good if we could fold that sort of planning in as part of those elements.
Well, yes, and I just think the council needs to be aware of how much acreage that was included around, and even north, east, all sides. And the maps we saw showed, North County and also showed South County, but there were a lot of lots. And we know if they put developments out there, my biggest concern was the last part of the last paragraph, when he talked about putting infrastructure out there, when we can't even get enough funds for infrastructure for our cities. And yet they want to take that money and put it into roads in developments in the rural areas. Anyway, I'd like to make sure that the council knows what's going on, because it is happening and it will happen.
The report that Jan is talking about is called the Growth Monitoring Report. Snohomish County just released it, and you can access on their website. If you have problems, let me know. I'll send you a link to it. But it's a report that's required to monitor the growth in all of the cities in Snohomish County and compare it to the projections from PSRC and the population projections we're expected to absorb. So there's a report for each city on how well they're doing on that. Graphs in there and talks about where the future growth will go. But it's a growth monitoring report and it's required to be done before comp plans can be redone.
Thank you.
I can send that link too, because I know I sent it to Mark.
Steve's was just a small portion. The whole larger report has so much more information in it.
Yeah, that's true.
Marilyn?
I'm just wondering on our capacity for water and sewer, is that all factored in as well? I mean, you know, we tried to plan ahead for growth to be able to have enough capacity, but if there's huge growth going on, how does that affect everything? Are we going to have new, improved?
Yeah, it is factored in, and that has been updated as we have moved forward. I will try to have Jim create a map that shows where our service area is and where we provide water, because our service area does extend outside the city limits, but in actuality, a lot of that development that you're seeing out in the rural areas is not City of Arlington water. City of Arlington water is actually very, very few.
Yeah.
I will say anecdotally that most of it is well water or supplied by PUD in the rural area outside of Arlington.
Okay.
But we'll put together a map that can illustrate what we have.
Would be good. I'd like just to feel confident that we have enough capacity to handle all this.
I ask that same question quite regularly.
Yes. All right,
I'm
Jessica and then Dawn.
Okay.
I had a question in regards to the same topic. Did we ever end up reviewing the rates and increasing so that the out of city water rates were higher than the in?
Jim and I just talked about that too this afternoon. Jim just got a proposal or some information back from our consultant, of which he's reviewing right now. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Jim, or do you need time to review it before we discuss it?
Yes, Jessica, that came in last week. I have not had a chance to, I opened it up, I skimmed it, and then I closed it. I have not had a chance to review it yet.
What
But
are we thinking for a timeline to bring it to council?
I'm looking to bring it to Paul and Barb probably right in the first part of January, with recommendations for going to council in early January.
So you do remember, we have to do a rate study. We can't just arbitrarily change our rates. We don't have that authority. So Jim will bring us the rate study that looks at what the future investment we need to make, and our rates have to be based on that.
It's a rate for connection fees for outside city limits.
Thank you.
My question would be okay, we got these outside of the city limit service areas. If we have a proposal, somebody wanting to put something on the outer limits of that service area, who pays for that water line in between our existing service area and clear out to them? Do they just pay for their hookup, or does the city charge them for the whole thing and then come back and collect off of new hookups?
If there's an extension outside the city, then the beneficiary that's getting the extension pays for the whole thing, unless there's some other capital need that's in there. For instance, with the one we were talking about today, there's potentially a reservoir that would be incorporated into that years down the road. So the city may pay the difference between the sizing of the pipe that they need versus what we would need. But the bulk of it goes to the developer.
So does that stop the person wanting the water from putting a well, if they're out there, if they've got water to get a well in?
No, it doesn't stop them from, if they desire a well instead, or that, is more economical, they can still do that out in the county. It's still allowed.
Okay.
Marilyn, did you have a question?
Well, I was just wondering if they're in our urban growth area and the water service area, then would it be an incentive for them to petition for annexation rather than have their rates higher?
It could be, except for I think our water service area covers areas that are not in our urban growth area.
I'd like to see a map. I think we should have a kind of a meeting on all this.
That's what Jan asked for, and that's what we're all committed to. And Jim's gotta
Okay.
go through this rate study, and that should feed some of that information. We could make it all part of one whole comprehensive look at the water service areas and the rates.
Sounds good. It sounds like we all have a lot of questions.
Can I make a suggestion? Remember how we used to do like 6:30 o'clock meetings for things like this? Because this is like a big topic. It's
Mhm.
not just a squeeze it in a workshop. So that would be my suggestion.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Do that. Michelle, did you have a question?
I just have a comment on Jan. Thank you for bringing this up because this gives us an opportunity now to research it and learn more about it, right? And to be more educated. So thank you.
Jim will take us through a tutorial. Trust me, when the item comes before you. So we will start early on that, Deborah. All right. Are there any other comments from council members this evening? Did you have any staff report?
Just to mention, this is our last business meeting for the year. Where we've taken care of all the business. We'll have a council workshop next Monday, the 14th. Looks like right now we won't need a meeting for the week of Christmas. We'll, like we normally do when we have a skip a meeting, we'll continue with accounts payable, things like that, and council will approve that at the first meeting in January. But all of the business right now that's on the workshop for the 14th is proposed to be carried over to the January 4th regular council meeting.
And I just have two items this evening. One is the request from the finance staff, and so we can stay in compliance with all of our requirements from the auditor's office, that Jessica Rowe sent you out an email recently about when your expense reports will be due. And I'm really asking everyone to try to commit to those deadlines so that we can close the year with all of this year's expenses in them. So if you could help us out with that, that'd be greatly appreciated. And then I think you all got a notice from Wendy that you were invited to the holiday. We're not doing the holiday breakfast for the employees this year, but we're doing a lunch, a virtual lunch. So on the 16th of December. I hope you all were able to respond to James on that. That's all I have.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Question.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.